The measuring tape snapped through the autumn air like a whip. I froze in my studio doorway, coffee mug halfway to my lips, watching three strangers pace through my garden. Their bright yellow vests blazed against the Vermont foliage, and a woman in heels clicked across my flagstone path, gesturing with a tablet. "Excuse me?" My voice carried across the morning stillness. "This is private property." The woman in heels turned, professional smile already in place. "Oh, you must be the housekeeper. Perfect timing. We're with Elegant Affairs here for the initial wedding layout." The coffee in my stomach curdled. "I'm Meredith Collins. This is my home and my pottery studio. There must be some mistake." Her smile flickered. She consulted her tablet. "This is 147 Highland Ridge Road? The Anderson wedding?" Anderson? The name hit like ice water. I hadn't spoken to my family in 14 years, not since they'd taken my trust fund and handed it to my brother Bradley for his second MBA. She tapped her screen, then spun it toward me. There it was in crisp digital formatting, my address, my property listed as the venue, and at the bottom, a signature. My signature. My hands trembled. I never authorized this. I never signed anything. "We have all the documentation right here, Miss Collins. Emails, contracts, everything approved by Meredith Anderson." She paused. "Oh, I see the issue. Your maiden name?" "No." I set my mug on the porch railing before I dropped it. "My name has always been Collins. Anderson is my brother's name." The woman's professional mask cracked slightly. She glanced at her colleagues who had stopped their measuring to watch. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mother's name lit up the screen and suddenly everything clicked into horrible focus. I answered, voice tight. "What did you do?" "Meredith, darling." Mother's voice dripped with artificial sweetness. "Isn't this wonderful? Bradley and Vanessa are finally getting married, and we've arranged everything. Your garden will be perfect for the ceremony." The measuring tape snapped again. I watched a man in a yellow vest stake out what looked like an aisle through my herb garden. Through the garden I'd planted myself, tending it through 3 summers until the lavender and thyme finally took hold. "You forged my signature." The words came out flat. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. We just moved things along since you've been so difficult to reach. Bradley's fiancé fell in love with the photos of your property online. It's time to put this silly estrangement behind us." I pressed my fingers against my temple. The property where I teach pottery classes? Where I host artist retreats? My home and my business? "Oh, those little classes can be rescheduled. This is Bradley's wedding. Family comes first." Family comes first. The same words she'd used when they took my trust fund, the money my godmother had left specifically for my education, the money that was supposed to help launch my art career. "No," I surprised myself with how steady my voice sounded. "This is my home, not your venue. I have a retreat scheduled that weekend with 12 paying students. We'll handle all that, the deposits, the rescheduling. Though really, Meredith, it's time you got a real job anyway. Law school is still an option, you know." My gaze drifted to my studio. Through the window, I could see the latest commission I'd been working on, a set of serving platters for a restaurant in Boston. The early morning light caught the glazes I'd spent months perfecting, turning them to liquid gold. "Get these people off my property," I said, "now." "Don't be difficult, Meredith. The invitations are already out. 200 guests. Bradley's so excited to reconnect." As if summoned by her words, my phone buzzed with a text. "Bradley. Thanks, sis. Vanessa's obsessed with your garden view. Mom says you're on board. You're the best. I'm calling the police." I ended the call on Mother's protests and turned to the wedding planner. "Pack up, now, or I'll have you removed for trespassing." The woman's smile had vanished entirely. She began gathering her things, gesturing for her team to do the same. As they hurried toward their van, my phone buzzed again. An email notification. My blood ran cold as I read the subject line. "Confirmation of catering deposit minus $32,000, Anderson wedding." The charge was on my old business credit card. The one I'd foolishly let my parents co-sign on when I first started my studio, back when I still believed they might support my dreams. I stood in my garden, watching the wedding planner's van disappear down my driveway. The measuring tape they'd dropped lay like a snake through my herbs, marking where they planned to set up chairs for 200 strangers. 48 hours. That's how long I had before the catering deposit became non-refundable. before my family's latest attempt to steamroll my boundaries became another debt I'd have to somehow repay. I walked to my studio, past the gleaming platters that represented years of perfecting my craft, past the shelves of pottery that paid my mortgage, past the sign advertising next month's retreat. My hands weren't trembling anymore. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts, scrolling to Naomi's number, my best friend, the paralegal who'd helped me understand my rights when my parents took my trust fund. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Remember how you said you'd help me if they ever tried anything again? I need everything you've got on identity theft and fraud." An hour later, the sunny breakfast nook felt like a war room. Papers covered every inch of my farmhouse table: vendor contracts, catering invoices, credit card statements. Each document revealed another layer of my family's deception. Through the window, autumn leaves skittered across my garden path where just hours ago, strangers had invaded with their measuring tapes. My hands shook as I dialed the catering company. A chipper voice answered, "Harvest Table Catering, this is Bethany." "My name is Meredith Collins. I understand you have a contract for the Anderson wedding at my property." I kept my voice steady, gripping a pen so hard my knuckles whitened. "I need to see all the documentation for this event." "Of course, let me pull that up." Keys clicked. "Here we go, signed by Meredith Anderson 3 weeks ago during our site visit. Such a lovely garden setup you have. We discussed the placement of food stations during your art class." My stomach lurched. "During my what?" "Your wheel-throwing workshop. The planners mentioned you were teaching, but your mother was happy to show us around. She has excellent taste. The appetizer menu she selected is divine." The pen snapped in my grip. Mother had walked caterers through my property while I taught my Tuesday morning class, the class that paid my mortgage. The classes she wanted to reschedule for Bradley's wedding. My doorbell chimed. Through the window, I spotted Naomi on my porch, briefcase in hand. Thank God. "I never authorized this event," I told Bethany. "The contract was signed fraudulently. I'll have my lawyer contact you with documentation." I hung up as Naomi entered, her paralegal training evident in her brisk stride and perfectly pressed pantsuit. "I brought everything," she said, pulling files from her bag. "Uncle Leon sends his regards. He remembers when they took your trust fund." "They've done it again." I gestured at the papers. "Look at this. Vendor contracts, deposits, all in my name. They used my old business credit card, the one I foolishly let them co-sign on when I first opened the studio." Naomi's dark eyes narrowed as she paged through documents. "Your mother signed these using your maiden name?" "Anderson, the name I haven't used since college, the name that represented everything I'd left behind. They told 200 people they could have a wedding here, in my garden, during my fall retreat." "The retreat that's already booked?" Naomi grabbed her laptop. "The one with 12 confirmed students who've paid deposits?" I nodded, throat tight. My phone buzzed, another text from Bradley. "Can't wait to see you, sis. Vanessa's bridesmaids are dying to take photos in your herb garden. Mom says you'll love the tent placement." "They knew about the retreat," I whispered. "Mother said she'd handle moving my students. Like my business means nothing. Like the last 14 years of building this place means nothing." Naomi's fingers flew across her keyboard. "First step, credit freeze. Then we document everything. Uncle Leon knows a detective who specializes in identity theft." Identity theft. The words tasted bitter. Against my own family. "Who forged your signature? Who entered your property without permission? Who charged thousands to your account?" Naomi's voice held steel. "Being related doesn't make it legal." An hour later, the sun caught my latest commissioned pieces drying on their shelves. A restaurant in Boston had ordered an entire set of serving platters. The glazes had taken months to perfect, layers of earth tones that captured Vermont's autumn colors. Colors my mother probably hadn't even noticed while she paraded wedding vendors through my studio. My phone lit up again. A message from an unknown number. "Hi, Meredith. This is Vanessa. Your mom gave me your number. Quick question about the wedding. Would it be okay if we moved some of your pottery displays? The photographer thinks they might clash with our cream and sage theme." The rage that swept through me burned cold and clean. "Naomi, how fast can we get a cease and desist letter drafted?" She was already reaching for her briefcase. I brought the template, but Mir. She caught my eye. Are you ready? This is war. They won't back down easily. Through my window, I watched the sheriff's cruiser roll past, Sam Griffith's regular patrol. He'd bought 3 of my vases last month. Said they reminded him of his grandmother's garden. My garden, my home, my life that I'd built piece by piece after they'd stolen my trust fund and tried to force me into law school. They already declared war, I said. They just didn't expect me to fight back. Naomi pulled out her phone. I'm calling Uncle Leon, he'll want to hear this. A text notification popped up from my mother. Darling, the florist needs to discuss archway placement. I told her you'd be available at 3. Don't be difficult about this, Meredith. Family comes first. Family comes first. The same words she'd used when they took my trust fund, when they tried to crush my dreams of being an artist, when they dismissed every boundary I'd drawn over 14 years of silence. I looked at my garden through new eyes, not as the sanctuary I'd created, but as a battlefield. And this time, I wasn't retreating. Tell your uncle, I said, that I need everything he's got, because they're not just threatening my property now, they're threatening my entire future. Naomi nodded, already dialing. Outside, autumn winds stirred the herbs I'd planted 3 summers ago. The lavender and thyme that had finally taken root, creating the perfect backdrop for my students' creative journeys. No wedding planner's measuring tape would mark that sacred space. No stranger's heel would crush those carefully tended plants. This was my home, my business, my life. And I was done letting family destroy what I'd built. The next morning, the emails started at dawn. Aunt Patricia, such a shame you won't help heal the family. Uncle George, your mother is heartbroken. Cousin Jennifer, Bradley deserves his perfect day. My phone buzzed again. A social media notification from Vanessa. 28 days until our magical farmhouse wedding. Can't wait to transform this charming Vermont studio into our dream venue. Anderson wedding. Vermont bride. My jaw clenched. The photo showed my garden, clearly taken during my teaching trip to Boston last month. They had been here, walking my property, planning their invasion while I worked. Your brother's lawyer called. Naomi's voice crackled through my phone speaker. Claims you gave verbal agreement months ago. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. That's impossible. I haven't spoken to Bradley since the trust fund theft. I know, but they're desperate. Your mother's campaign is backfiring. Vendors are asking questions about the authorization. A car crunched up my gravel driveway. Through the window, I spotted the gold Mercedes my parents had given Bradley for his 30th birthday. Mother stepped out first, perfect posture in her Chanel suit. Father followed, tugging at his collar. Bradley emerged last, shoulders hunched. I opened my front door before they reached it. This is private property. Leave. Darling. Mother's heels clicked across my porch. Don't be difficult. We've brought the florist to discuss archway placement. No, the word rang across the morning air. This is my home and my business, not your event space. After everything we've done for you. Like stealing my trust fund? The words tasted like copper in my mouth. The money Aunt Sarah left specifically for my education that you handed to Bradley for an MBA he never used? Bradley flinched. Mother's smile hardened into porcelain. You're still fixated on ancient history. She waved a manicured hand. We gave you opportunities. Law school would have. Get off my property. My voice didn't shake. Now, before I call the police. Meredith. Father stepped forward. Be reasonable. The invitations are sent. 200 guests. Bradley's future in-laws. Not my problem. I pulled out my phone. Sheriff Griffith's number is on speed dial. He'd love to hear how you forged my signature on vendor contracts. They retreated, Mother's heels wobbling slightly on the gravel. I watched until the Mercedes disappeared down my driveway, then sank onto my porch swing. My hands trembled as I texted Naomi. They showed up, bringing reinforcements tonight? Her reply came instantly. Already packed my overnight bag. Judge Myers is drafting the cease and desist letters. I spent the afternoon with my property protection checklist. Changed locks. Security cameras at strategic points. Signs clearly posted. Private property. Ceramic retreat in session. My regular students had offered to maintain a presence during the wedding weekend. Local artists rallied around me, offering to teach guest sessions. Your permit application is approved. Judge Meyer's voice rumbled through my phone that evening. Official business use documentation for your retreat. They can't claim it's just a private residence now. I logged into my banking app, initiating the fraud investigation on the catering charges. Next came the vendor notifications formal letters documenting the unauthorized use of my name and property. Naomi arrived as sunset painted my garden gold. The same garden where my parents planned to seat 200 strangers, where Bradley and Vanessa would exchange vows under an archway of stolen dreams. Look what came today. She handed me a thick envelope. Records from the trust fund transfer 14 years ago. I traced the edges of the envelope. The statute of limitations? Hasn't expired. She squeezed my shoulder. Judge Myers confirmed you could still press charges for the original theft. The garden darkened as night crept in. Wind chimes tinkled the ones I'd made in my first pottery class, when I chose art over law school, when I chose myself over their expectations. Later, I found myself in my studio, surrounded by student testimonials from past retreats. Your classes helped me find my voice. Finally learned to trust my creativity. This space feels like coming home. My fingers traced the rim of a bowl I'd thrown that morning. The clay had known exactly what it wanted to be, just like I had all those years ago. I picked up the trust fund documents. The choice stretched before me like my garden path in the moonlight. Let the past rest in cold ashes or strike a match and watch it all burn? A text lit up my phone. Bradley, Mom's hysterical, Dad's drinking. Please just give us the garden for 3 hours. I'll pay whatever you want. I set my phone face down. Through the studio windows, security lights illuminated my private event signs. The cameras blinked steadily, guarding my boundaries. Inside, shelves of pottery gleamed, each piece a testament to the life I'd built without them. My hands didn't shake anymore. I opened my laptop and began to type, "Dear Mr. Myers, regarding the trust fund documentation. Sometimes justice arrives 14 years late, but it arrives all the same." At the present, the permit paperwork landed on my desk with a satisfying thud. After a week of phone calls and bureaucratic wrangling, the county had officially approved my ceramics retreat. My hands traced over the embossed seal, remembering the quiet strength in Judge Meyer's voice when he'd connected me with the right officials. The sight of Bradley's forged signatures still made my jaw clench, but at least the credit card company had frozen the account. My phone buzzed. Mother's name flashed across the screen, followed by a barrage of texts. "You're cut off. For good this time. No more playing nice. I hope you're happy destroying your brother's special day." I switched off the screen and walked to my studio window. The morning sun caught my latest commission pieces, their glazes a testament to years of refinement. A group of chickadees squabbled at the bird feeder, scattering seeds across my herb garden, the same garden where Mother planned to seat 200 wedding guests. The crunch of tires on gravel pulled me from my thoughts. Naomi's red Subaru rolled up my driveway, and she emerged with an armful of papers and a determined set to her jaw. Behind her, Sheriff Griffith's patrol car made another pass along my road, right on schedule. "Brought you something?" Naomi announced, spreading a stack of laminated signs across my work table. "Private event, no unauthorized access," blazed in clear block letters, along with my permit numbers and retreat dates. They're perfect. I touched one sign, imagining Eleanor's face when she saw them. "Samuel's installing the security cameras this afternoon." "Good, because your mother's latest Facebook rant is making waves, but not the way she intended." Naomi pulled up a post on her phone. Eleanor's carefully curated social media persona had finally cracked, spilling bitter accusations across 3 rambling paragraphs. The comment section overflowed with unexpected support. "Who tries to take over someone's home for a wedding? Sounds like your daughter has built something beautiful. Shame you can't respect that. My son's a potter. Those retreats are serious business commitments." A notification popped up. Another venue had canceled their contract after receiving my fraud documentation. My shoulders relaxed a fraction. The tower of cards Eleanor built was toppling, one vendor at a time. My phone lit up again. Bradley's number. "You've always been selfish," his voicemail spat. "Mom and Dad gave you everything and you threw it away for your little hobby. Now you won't even help with my wedding?" A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "Everything except my trust fund," I muttered, deleting the message. Naomi's hand squeezed my shoulder. "Your brother's fiancée tried contacting your students yesterday, wanted to convince them to cancel their retreat reservations." Of course she did. I pulled up my student roster, checking for cancellations. None. These people had invested in themselves, in their art. Just like I had, when everyone said I was throwing my life away. A knock at the studio door made us both jump. Samuel stood in the entrance, tool belt slung across his uniform. "Cameras are ready whenever you are," he said. "And just so you know, Eleanor stopped by the coffee shop this morning. Tried to convince my wife to pressure me into blocking your retreat permit." He shook his head. "Sue told her to leave and not come back." Warmth spread through my chest. My small town had shown me more loyalty in a week than my family had in 14 years. "Your mother's running out of allies," Naomi observed, helping Samuel unpack his equipment. 3 more vendors canceled this morning. Vanessa's family is asking questions about Bradley's finances. And I heard through the legal grapevine that your father tried calling Judge Myers yesterday." I froze. "Why?" "Wanted to negotiate. Quietly." Naomi's eyes gleamed. "Judge Myers told him any communication needs to go through proper channels now." The muscles in my neck unclenched. I'd spent so many years believing I needed my family's approval, their connections, their support. Now they were the ones scrambling, watching their perfect wedding plans dissolve. My laptop chimed with a new email. Vanessa's name appeared in my inbox, but it wasn't the bride-to-be writing, it was her mother. "Miss Collins, I've recently learned disturbing details about how your property was acquired for our daughter's wedding. Bradley assured us everything was arranged properly. If you're amenable, I'd like to discuss appropriate compensation for a legitimate venue rental. I should mention that Bradley indicated you'd gifted them use of the property as a gesture of reconciliation. He also claimed you'd agreed to reschedule your business commitments. Please let me know if you'd be willing to meet. Margaret Palmer." I stood at my window, watching Samuel mount the first security camera. Beyond him, my garden stretched toward the mountain's thriving, peaceful mine. Every plant, every stone path, every ceramic wind chime represented a choice I'd made for myself. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Just discovered your parents mortgaged their house for this wedding. They're desperate to impress our family. Can we talk, Margaret?" The pieces clicked into place. My parents' aggressive tactics, Bradley's increasing panic, the elaborate plans for a wedding they couldn't afford. I looked at Naomi, who'd read the message over my shoulder. "What do you think?" She studied my face. "You could crush them completely right now. You have everything documented. The fraud, the harassment, even proof about the trust fund." She paused. Or you show them exactly who you've become, someone strong enough to stand her ground without destroying others." I turned back to my window, watching the morning light play across my herb garden. The garden I'd planted, the garden I'd protect. "Call Margaret back," I said finally. "Tell her I'll meet with her. Not to negotiate about the venue that's still absolutely no, but to explain exactly who attempted to defraud who here." I picked up one of my no unauthorized access signs. Sometimes the best revenge is simply standing your ground. Samuel's drill whirred outside, mounting another camera. Naomi began arranging my documentation for the meeting. And somewhere across town, I imagined Eleanor realizing that her perfectly planned assault on my boundaries had accomplished exactly one thing. It had shown everyone who she really was. The morning sun glinted off the security cameras I'd installed last week. Through my studio window, I watched Samuel's patrol car roll into position at the end of my driveway, its official presence a silent guardian against the storm I knew was coming. "Your teapot glazing looks perfect," June, my oldest student, said from her wheel. She nodded toward the piece I'd been working on before dawn, when sleep proved impossible. "That copper red is extraordinary." I touched the rim of the pot, still amazed how 30 years of muscle memory could produce something beautiful even when my mind sparked with anger. Around me, 11 other students worked at their wheels, all of them here for the ceramics retreat they'd paid for months ago, all of them proof that my business was real, legitimate, mine. The walkie-talkie on my desk crackled. First car's approaching, Tom from security reported. Looks like the advance team. 3 vehicles, all loaded with flowers. My hand stayed steady as I lifted the teapot, placing it carefully on the shelf. I'd spent 14 years building this life. No one would tear it down today. The first screech of tires on gravel brought me to the window. Eleanor's silver Mercedes led the procession, my mother's face visible through the windshield. Even from here, I could see her lips pressed into that familiar line of determination. Everyone keep working, I told my students, though they'd all pause to watch. This is your space. You paid to be here. Don't let anyone tell you different. The Mercedes stopped short at the chain across my driveway. Through the newly installed outdoor speakers, I heard Tom's voice. This is private property. There's a permitted event in progress. Eleanor's car door slammed. She marched toward the chain in her designer suit, heels wobbling on the gravel. Don't be ridiculous. I'm the mother of the bride. I mean, groom. This is my daughter's property. Ma'am, I have documentation showing Miss Collins is the sole owner. There's a ceramics retreat in progress. You'll need to move along. Meredith, Eleanor's voice carried across the morning air. Stop this childish display right now. There are 200 guests arriving. I stepped onto my studio's covered porch, Naomi silent and solid beside me. My mother's face twisted when she saw us, that familiar mix of disappointment and calculation that had shadowed my childhood. Mrs. Anderson, Naomi called out, her paralegal voice crisp and professional. As outlined in our cease and desist letter, this property is hosting a permitted private event. Any attempt to enter will be treated as criminal trespassing. More cars appeared behind Eleanor's Mercedes, Bradley's Range Rover, Richard's BMW, Vanessa's family in their imported luxury vehicles. The catering van that still showed a pending charge on my credit card. You can't do this, Bradley shouted, jumping out of his car. The invitations are sent. Vanessa's whole family flew in from California. Invitations sent with my forged signature, I said, my voice carrying across the distance. Using my credit card without permission. Claiming my home as your venue without asking. Would you like me to continue listing the crimes, or should I let the police report do that for you? The catering van's backup beeper cut through the morning as it tried to turn around in my narrow drive. Behind it, guests in formal wear were emerging from their cars, confusion evident on their faces as they read the private ceramics retreat in progress signs. I can't believe you'd humiliate your brother like this, Eleanor said, her voice rising to that familiar pitch that once made me shrink into myself. After everything we've done for you. Like stealing my trust fund? The words flew out sharp and clean. Or forging my signature? Or maybe you mean charging thousands to my business account without permission? Vanessa appeared beside Bradley, her white dress a bright slash against the autumn foliage. You told me she agreed to this, she hissed at him. You promised everything was arranged. It was. Bradley's face flushed red. Mom handled all the details. By committing fraud, I said, pulling a thick folder from beside the door. Would you like to see the documentation? I have copies for everyone. Including the police report about the identity theft. Bradley, I especially enjoyed the part where you signed my name on the catering contract. Your forgery needs work. The folder dropped from my hand, papers scattering across the gravel like autumn leaves. Vanessa's father stepped forward, his face darkening as he read the nearest page. You used her credit card without permission? He asked Bradley. Forged her signature on contracts? Dad, no, I didn't. Mom said she'd handle everything. Bradley's voice cracked like a poorly glazed pot. Eleanor surged forward, hand raised as if to shake the chain. This is about family, about healing old wounds. Step back from the property line, ma'am. Samuel's voice cut through the chaos. The sheriff emerged from his car, one hand resting casually on his belt. This is a permitted private event. You folks need to move along now. I watched my mother's face crumple, then reform into something harder. Richard, she snapped. Do something. But my father stood by his car, hands in his pockets, looking at the garden I'd cultivated from bare earth. At the studio I'd built with my own hands, at the life I'd created without them. Let's go, he said quietly. It's over, Eleanor. Over? She whirled on him. Our son's wedding is ruined. Our reputation is exactly what you've earned, I finished for her. From the studio behind me came the soft whir of pottery wheels, the gentle splash of water on clay. My students worked on, creating beauty while my family's facade cracked and fell away. One by one, the wedding guests retreated to their cars. Vanessa's father guided her away from Bradley, his face stern. The catering van finally managed to turn around, leaving deep ruts in the gravel I'd have to repair later. Through it all, I stood on my porch, feet planted firmly on boards I'd sanded myself. Watching Eleanor's fury, Bradley's panic, the slow dissolution of their carefully crafted plans. When only my father's car remained, he walked to the chain, looked up at me with eyes that might have held regret, pulled an envelope from his jacket. "You've made quite a life here," he said, letting the envelope fall among the scattered papers. "Is this the end of your revenge, or just the beginning?" I met his gaze steadily. "My life isn't revenge, Dad. It's just my life, the one you tried to stop me from building." He nodded once, turned away. The sound of his car door closing echoed like the lid of a coffin. Inside my studio, June's voice rose in quiet conversation with another student. The wheel spun. Clay shaped itself beneath practiced hands. I breathed in the scent of earth and creativity and freedom. The morning sun caught the copper-red glaze of my teapot, turning it to liquid fire. The morning sun spilled across my workbench, catching the rims of 12 perfect mugs lined up for today's retreat. Through the window, spring blossoms dotted my garden where, 1 year ago, my family had tried to stage Bradley's wedding. The memory no longer stung. "Miss Collins?" A tentative voice drew my attention to the studio door. Jenny, my newest student, stood clutching her sketchbook. At 19, she reminded me of myself, talented, determined, and carrying the weight of family disapproval like stones in her pockets. "The other students are arriving. Should I set up the welcome table?" Perfect timing. I wiped clay from my hands and gestured to the shelf of handmade mugs. "Let's use the blue ones today." Nothing says welcome like drinking coffee from something you could have made yourself. The spring retreat marked my busiest season yet. Word had spread about Hillside Studios' specialty, a sanctuary for artists rebuilding their lives after family rejection. The waiting list stretched into next year. My phone buzzed. Naomi's text lit up the screen. "Guess who just made partner? Celebrating in your garden tonight. No arguments." A smile tugged at my lips. My best friend had stood beside me through every step of this journey, from the day she helped document my family's fraud to the moment she watched me sign the final restraining order. Her promotion felt like victory for both of us. The workshop filled with voices and footsteps. Jenny arranged portfolios while I hung the latest addition to our gallery wall, a framed check for $160,000. The settlement my parents paid after Judge Myers proved they'd illegally diverted my trust fund. Below it hung the program for our first scholarship recipients' art show. "Your session saved my life." The words drifted from the kitchen where 2 alumni helped set up breakfast. I never knew making pottery could heal family trauma. I touched the wind chimes hanging in my studio window, crafted from the shards of my grandmother's china pieces my mother had shipped in a box marked "Family Treasures" after the failed wedding takeover. The fragments caught sunlight, transformed from broken heirlooms into music. The mailbox flag stood up as I walked past. Inside, a letter from Bradley, his third since Vanessa left him last fall. Each envelope remained sealed, not from anger, but from peace. Some bridges stayed burned, and that was okay. Judge Myers arrived early for the retreat's opening ceremony, his weathered hands steady as he arranged chairs in the garden. "Your godmother would have been proud, Meredith. This is exactly what she meant that trust fund to create." Students filtered into the garden, claiming seats beneath flowering dogwood trees. The space where wedding chairs should have stood now hosted pottery wheels and work tables. My garden had become what it was always meant to be, a place of creation, not performance. Before we began, I addressed the circle of faces, some bearing fresh wounds of rejection, others wearing the quiet confidence of survival. "I want to share something. Society often tells us that art is selfish, that choosing our creative path over family expectations makes us ungrateful. But your art isn't selfish, it's your contribution to the world. Your boundaries aren't walls, they're the foundation you build your truth upon." Naomi slipped into the back row, legal briefcase exchanged for comfortable shoes. She'd asked once if I regretted not giving my family another chance. The answer lived in every perfectly imperfect pot that left my studio, in every student who discovered their voice at my wheels. The wind stirred my chimes, morning light dancing through transformed fragments. I'd learned that revenge wasn't about destroying what hurt you. It was about building something so beautiful from the wreckage that the original pain became just another glaze in the firing. Welcome to Hillside. I smiled at my students, at my chosen family. Let's make something beautiful. As I demonstrated the day's first technique, clay spinning beneath my hands, I glimpsed my younger self in Jenny's eager eyes. That terrified artist who thought family approval meant more than creative truth. I wanted to tell her, look how far we've come. Look what we built from the ashes of other people's expectations. But instead, I simply guided her hands on the wheel, showing her how pressure and patience transform raw clay into vessels strong enough to hold whatever life pours into them. Some lessons weren't meant for words. The chimes sang in the spring breeze, their music carrying across my garden where students bent over wheels and work tables. Inside each broken piece of my grandmother's china, light caught and scattered, sending patterns dancing across fresh clay waiting to be shaped into something new, something true, something free.